let's dive into what I alluded to at the beginning.
Yeah.
That young Africans don't speak well of democracy. Okay.
Yeah.
Many African leaders are taking advantage of democracy. Like you mentioned, we have so many leaders who have been, in fact, I refer to them as rule to death. It's like they are like monarchies. Okay, yeah. So they will be on the seat until they expire.
Yeah.
So see, they do this to the detriment of their people.
Yeah.
Now, does democracy work in Africa? And what is the alternative? See, when those guys, these young people tell me they don't like democracy, and many of them also talk about because it's a Western thing. Okay. Although I don't agree with that, I ask them, what is the alternative?
Yeah.
And nobody has ever come back to me.
Okay, Kayode. You know, it's a very good question, right? And it goes back to one thing we discussed earlier. Everybody has blue sky thinking, but very few people have ideas. And that goes through the whole of the through the whole structure. Let me not say the whole continent, through the whole structure. The leaders really have solutions, but they blue sky thinking. The followers have blue sky thinking, and therefore we keep talking big. But then nothing happens because you need to convert your ideas into practical solutions, or somebody has to do it. You might be an ideas person, but you need somebody that will convert that to practical steps.
Yes.
So let me address your question, right? When people say democracy doesn't work, I do exactly the same thing you do, which is to ask, what are you proposing to do? Because in the sense of it, democracy is not Western or Eastern. Democracy is a way of choosing your leaders.
Yes.
It's not Western or Eastern. It's not, the Japanese use it, different countries use it. It's not West or East. It is a way of ensuring that the minority do not get taken up by the majority simply because they do not have a voice, right? If democracy hasn't worked in Africa, and there's no evidence to suggest it hasn't worked, and the reason why I would say that is this. When you focus on the leadership and the results without looking at building institutions, it doesn't matter what you build on top of it. You will come back to the same spot.
Okay.
Now, when people say democracy doesn't work, they say the leaders we elect, the people we vote for, either the elections are rigged or they don't perform. And then when you say, okay, but what is the alternative? And somebody say, let's have military men. I say, but military men tick exactly the same box. They are neither elected because they just turn up one day and say, we're now your leaders.
Yeah.
There's no accountability for them, and you cannot get them out. So what is the difference between the two? Tell me the difference. In the practical terms, forget about the stories. In the practical terms, what is the difference between the two? The difference is, the first one, you feel cheated, right? Because I went to vote, my vote didn't matter.
You can shout. You can go out and shout.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes you can't. We have to be honest. Sometimes you can't. But the second one also doesn't ask your permission, right? The two of them can perpetuate themselves in power.
Yeah.
Right? And the two of them may not deliver because the politicians don't have accountability. The soldiers don't have accountability. So you're back to square one. But the difference for most people is a strong man mentality.
Yeah.
Right? If you notice what has been happening now among the Kupis, they dress in a certain way. Right? People have come to establish this. It's like when you had Che Guevara.
Yeah.
Right? They've come to establish this persona of Sankara. We dress like him, we talk like him, we say we are like him.
Yeah.
So we sell you the idea and you're like, yay. I said, one of the things that you should always do in Africa, right, is that we should have the respectful skepticism. Respectful skepticism, right? Whether you're a military leader or a civilian leader, you have to deliver before I celebrate.
Yeah.
Your appearance does not cause me any joy to celebrate. your results is what would determine whether you're a good leader or not. Right? So when people say democracy hasn't worked, right? Take example of the countries where it hasn't worked, right? And they are all over Africa. But if you look at it, in many of those countries, we've also tried military rule and it hasn't worked.
Yeah.
Right? In many of those African countries. When you go a step further and say, do you want monarchy? Because monarchy suffers from the same thing. Monarchy is not based on competence. It's based on when you were born, right? So you become king. The only thing is you might kill your brothers and sisters, so you become king, right? So you get quickly to the top of the queue, right? But this thing is, it is not these systems that matters. It is the institution that would matter. But people don't understand that. Again, because we're traumatized, right? We have tried different things and people are simply tired. They want a savior. It goes back to what I said earlier about the itinerant pastor. People want saviors. And if you come in looking like a savior, they gravitate towards you because they just want somebody to save them.
Yeah.
They don't care the system. They just want somebody to save them. But the problem with looking for a savior is that even if you get a savior, because there is no structure, you cannot replicate it.
Yeah.
Right? You cannot replicate that good work. Right? Because it's either the guy dies and there's no replacement, he's killed, there's no replacement, or he leaves office and there's no adequate replacement. Right? I was reading the other day about Rwanda, about the fact that, Kagame wants to go for another term. And people said, oh, yeah, he should stay. And because he's doing such a fantastic job, why do you want to change him? But the fact is, if he doesn't have a successor, one day, he said that he becomes too old, in which case he can't function. None of us has...
Cameroon.
Yeah, right? So when you have this lack of structure, lack of a conveyor belt, lack of institutions, right? We rely on a savior, right? And when the savior doesn't work, we go back to square one because everything is broken down and you go back to the beginning, right? So for me, yes, people are right to say democracy hasn't worked, but none of the others have worked. So when you celebrate one over the other, you need to understand what is it that I'm celebrating, right? What is it I'm asking for? If you say, I don't care what system, that doesn't work also because that means that there's no structure. You can't say, I don't care as long as it's a good leader. But what is a good leader, right? If a military man comes in today, you will not know whether it's good or not for the next maybe 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like you're going to know by tomorrow, right? If a politician comes in, at least you know in 3 years you can vote him out. Yes, you might not be able to. In 4 years, at least you can vote him out, right? If a king is there until he dies, or his brother or somebody kills him, it doesn't go, right?
Yeah.
So democracy at least gives you some level of comfort that you may be able to change, right? But to me, the problem is not the system of government. The problem is we need to ask ourselves, what do we want? But we cannot have military man today, civilian tomorrow, king tomorrow. As long as they are performing, we don't care. Because you cannot build a country without some form of structure.
Yeah.
Because that means you don't even know how you're going to replace the current government.
Yeah. See, well said. See, what I focus on, what I discuss these things with young Africans is this. I ask one gentleman, I can't remember what country, but he's a small country. I asked him, tell me, how many tribes do you have in your country? He said 77. That's what he told me. I said, okay. So democracy, you don't want democracy. Okay. So what do you want? Do you want military? He said no. Okay. I say monarchy. How many kings do you have in your country? He said, he doesn't know. There are thousands. Every village has a chief or king. Okay, okay, good. So which one of those kings is gonna become your leader of the country? See, we might not want democracy. Myself, I'm not a fan of democracy for a different reason. Okay, but democracy to me is the only way for a very diverse society to at least choose one person or a group of people to govern the country or a state, because we are so diverse. See, I tell people, I say this to people and they get angry at me. I say, yes, you might be angry about colonialism, okay? But what would we be right now if we're not forced into states? See, many people don't realize that, because he was telling me about the amount of wars that the Europeans like wars. Okay, I told him, okay, let me tell you, if we in Africa of over 3,000 tribes were not forced into statehood in small groups and were left as we were 500 years ago, what do you think will be happening right now? See, because in Nigeria, for example, by the time the British were dominating the South, the Fulanis were dominating for the North. So assuming the British were not there, okay, the Fulanis would have conquered all through from the North to South, or maybe 2 or 3 other tribes will now come together to defeat them. And that will continue all through from Nigeria, the area of Nigeria, into Cameroon, into Gabon. I mean, so see, we as a continent of very diverse peoples, democracy, at least it has done one thing: it has saved us from ourselves. So yeah, it has saved us. Yeah.
Let me just say something to what you said, which I find refreshing in a way, but also it leads to the disinformation that is out there.
Mm.